The quarterback position has been pretty weird for Michigan over the last decade or so. You started out with super athletic and highlight reel quarterbacks in Devin Gardner and Denard Robinson, and then you moved on to guys like Wilton Speight, Jake Rudock, and Shea Patterson. After a rough start to the 2020 season, Joe Milton was benched, and in came a new highly recruited quarterback by the name of Cade McNamara. They called him the best quarterback in Northern Nevada history. He was wanted by schools such as USC, Alabama, and Georgia, and after a quick start, looked like the next great Wolverines quarterback. Unfortunately though, he did not have a great 2021 season. People think his ceiling is low, and he has now been replaced in favor of JJ McCarthy. In today's video, I want to talk about the rise and fall of Cade McNamara, as we're going to go through his story, his time at Michigan, and what has ultimately happened to him so far. But before we get into it, we're on the road to 100K, so quickly be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like if you want to support the channel, let me know what player I should cover next, and turn on notifications so you never miss when I upload. Now, let's get started and talk about what happened to Cade McNamara. So in order to understand what happened to him, we first need to go back in time. Sports ran in their family's veins as their dad played baseball at Fresno State, and like father like son, he introduced them to sports. The McNamara family was born and raised in Reno, Nevada, and by the time they were in middle school, the McNamaras had trained hard. One of them became a wide receiver, and two of them would become quarterbacks. Their dad said, quote, "When we were living in Reno, Cade would literally grab Kyle and go pick up Jake at middle school and go back to the field. The quarterbacks got their work in, Kyle got his receiving training in, and then they go to speed training and weights at a local gym, on top of what they did in the morning. They trained and trained for years, and they would eventually pay off for the family." His brother Jake originally committed to Colorado State before flipping to UTEP, so quarterback runs in the family. Cade was the one who started it though. In 6th grade, his dad asked him what he wanted to be serious about. Cade had to pick a sport. He was a great athlete as he split time between both football and baseball. In football, he was a pummeling running back and a defensive end, and in baseball, he had a great fastball and was a great defensive player. He decided to go with football, but would choose a position he had never played, quarterback. It's arguably the most difficult position in the sport, but not only did he want to be good at it, he wanted to be amazing at it. His dream was to play at a big-time college in front of 100,000 fans in prime-time television slots. In 8th grade, he decided he would graduate a semester early, and he'd go to whatever college he wanted to the spring of his senior year. Early on in his high school career, he would spend his Sundays emailing dozens of colleges with his highlight reel and an explanation for why he'd fit in their school. After becoming a 4-year starter, leading his team to a regional title, becoming a 4-star recruit, an Elite 11 player, and a one-time commitment to Notre Dame, McNamara had a crazy high school career. As a sophomore, the team was down 31-7 in the regional title game, and it appeared they were on their way to basketball season. Except, he would lead them on a comeback, and they would win. This really put him on the map, and he would get his first big-time offer from Notre Dame. After blowing up, his dreams were coming true, and he decided to become the future quarterback of the Fighting Irish. He said, quote, "Notre Dame checked all the boxes for me. Speaking with Coach Reese, Coach Kelly, and Coach Polian, they all had a big impact on my decision. I wanted to play for a national championship contender, and I feel that their description of a quarterback describes me perfect. I knew there was something special when I stepped onto campus." That ended before his junior season, and despite bigger numbers and more offers, a major change would come for Cade. He decided to decommit from Notre Dame and reopen his recruitment. His dad said, quote, "Not many people know how much he was recruited because we kept it very quiet, but there weren't many schools that didn't want him. We just took a different approach, and the decision was going to come down to Alabama, USC, and Michigan." Cade had an incredible prep career as he was named the National Gatorade Player of the Year and had become a local legend. His head coach said, quote, "Cade is the best high school quarterback I've ever seen in Northern Nevada. His field vision and ability to escape the pocket is unparalleled." So, as I alluded to earlier, he'd be down to a couple of big-time programs. The first one was USC, the second was Alabama, and the third one was Michigan. Ultimately, he would choose the Wolverines, and he'd get to play in front of 100,000 fans on big-time TV slots, just like he predicted back in middle school. He said, quote, "I really felt it when I visited. For me, having that instant relationship with Coach Harbaugh isn't something I can get at any other school." He had successfully made his dreams a reality, and he was a big deal. According to 24/7 Sports, he was a 4-star recruit, the number 7 pro-style quarterback, and the 268th best player in the class of 2019. So, how'd he end up doing at Michigan, where there was always another big-time quarterback ahead of you? Cade would arrive in 2019, and he would join a crowded quarterback room that included Shea Patterson, Joe Milton, and Dylan McCaffrey, but Harbaugh had found one interesting detail from Alabama. One of his coaches on the staff was previously at Alabama, and he apparently told Coach Harbaugh that McNamara was the number 1 quarterback on their board at Bama. Harbaugh said, "That's good to know." In 2019, he would obviously redshirt, but in 2020, he was looking to battle it out for the starting job with the void that Patterson had left. But unfortunately, when he arrived, there were major restrictions going on in the world, so he'd have to find a clever way to fight for the job. He said, quote, "It was me, Cade, Nico Collins, and Ben Mason. We all had to sneak into Pioneer High School. You had to duck under a fence or some crazy thing, but we were just trying to get the work in, trying to get the chemistry down." It was a testament to how much Cade wanted it, and with Dylan McCaffrey eventually transferring, he'd become the backup to Joe Milton. Milton was praised as the next big thing for Michigan, but he'd flame out pretty quickly. Cade would get an opportunity to make his first career start against Rutgers, in which he put on a show. He went 27 of 36 for 260 yards and 4 touchdowns, and he also had a rushing score and did not turn the ball over. They ended up beating Rutgers 48-42 in triple overtime, and this was Cade's first big win. The following week, he would struggle though. He'd go 12 of 25 for 91 yards in a loss to Penn State, but the glimmer of hope he showed against Rutgers gave him the inside track to the starting job in 2021. The Wolverines obviously also had J.J. McCarthy, and they brought in Texas Tech transfer Alan Bowman. He would end up with the starting job though, and in their first game, he would throw 2 touchdowns in a win over Western Michigan, and then threw for 44 yards in a win over Washington. He had 2 touchdowns against Northern Illinois before he was a game manager against Rutgers. Through his first 4 games, he really hadn't done a whole lot, but he was becoming a good game manager. After 2 touchdowns, he'd lead them to a win over Wisconsin on the road, and then they would survive by 3 points against Nebraska. Finally though, he would start to pick things up. He'd throw 2 touchdowns in a loss to Michigan State, 2 touchdowns in a win over Indiana, 3 touchdowns in a road victory over Penn State, and 2 touchdowns in a win over Maryland. He was starting to get in a little bit of a groove, and he also led them to a historic win over Ohio State. The Wolverines hadn't won in years, and with that win, they got a chance to go to the Big Ten Championship, where ultimately, after 1 touchdown, they beat number 13 Iowa and punched their ticket to the college football playoff. Unfortunately though, Cade's flaws were on full display, as against Georgia in the college football playoff, he'd go 11 of 19 for 106 yards and 2 interceptions. He didn't throw a touchdown and was also replaced by J.J. McCarthy. McCarthy was the hotshot 5-star freshman, and everyone knew that his ceiling was a lot higher than Cade's. But Cade just did something no Michigan quarterback had done in a while, and that was get them within distance of a title. Josh Gaddis had this to say, quote, "That's really kind of his DNA. He's the old school junkyard dog kind of player. He's going to scrap for everything, and he's going to outwork everyone he possibly can to prepare himself at a high level to lead this team." So while Cade may not have been the flashiest player in the world, he worked hard, they had won games, and it was going to be really hard to bench him. Except going into 2022, this is what would ultimately happen. Jim Harbaugh would announce that both players would get an opportunity to make starts, and that they would determine the quarterback battle after a couple of games. Cade would get the first game against Colorado State. How did he do? He went 9 of 18 for 136 yards and a touchdown. This is against arguably the worst team in college football, and this did not move the needle much for him. Fortunately, after the game, you could read his body language, and he knew he had lost the job. The following weekend, McCarthy would go 11 of 12 for 229 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 56-10 victory over Hawaii. From then on out, McCarthy was the guy. McNamara would play a little bit against UConn, but he would suffer an ankle injury in that game, which has now put him out for a few weeks and even further behind the 8 ball. As of right now, McCarthy is starting to take off, and it seems that McNamara's time as a starting quarterback is pretty much over. There was a rumor a couple of days ago that he was going to enter the portal, but his dad came out and said that was not true. As of right now though, I wonder if the transfer portal is the best option for him. While McNamara is not an all-star, all-American kind of player, he still has a lot of experience and would be wanted by most schools in college football. That's why I think he'd have plenty of options in the portal, and maybe he could go closer to home. So what has ultimately gone wrong for McCarthy? Well, I really think it's just one thing, and it's just that he was not making big plays. Either Josh Gaddis and the coaching staff didn't trust him, or Cade was just not taking any risks. It was probably a combination of both, but it just never seemed he elevated the offense that much, and his ceiling was just always a little bit lower than the other guy on the roster. He wasn't going to make mistakes, he was going to do the right thing, and he did win games, but in order for Michigan to take that next step and potentially get a national championship, he was not going to be the guy. Cade McNamara is not at all a failure, and I would not call him a bust either. He's a good quarterback, but he's just not what Michigan needs right now. But what do you guys think? If you're a Michigan fan, what do you think of Cade McNamara? What do you think of the current quarterback situation? And what are your expectations for this year's team? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video. Let me know what player I should do next. Subscribe if you're new, and check out all of the videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.